Here's a word that needs to be spoken into the hearts of many today. You're not powerless. Life has a way of convincing us that we are victims of circumstances, that we are prisoners of situations, that we are bound to the labels others put on us. The world tells you that you are weak, that you can't change, that you'll always be what you've been. But that's a lie. Powerlessness is not your destiny. Helplessness is not your inheritance. You are not designed to live beneath when you were created to live above. You are not powerless because authority has already been given to you. That means your strength is not based on what you can do in your own might, but on the authority that has been placed in your hands. Too many people confuse authority with ability. They think that if they are not strong enough, talented enough, wealthy enough, or educated enough, then they have no power to influence change. But authority is not about your personal capacity. Authority comes from a higher source, and once it is delegated to you, it carries weight beyond your own strength. Consider the image of a traffic officer standing at a busy intersection. Cars, buses, and trucks are moving quickly, and each vehicle weighs thousands of pounds. Physically, that officer does not have the power to stop one of those vehicles. If he stood in front of a bus and tried to hold it back with his hands, he would be crushed in an instant. But when he steps into the street in his uniform and raises his hand, traffic halts. Why? Because he carries authority. That badge represents a system that backs him up. The drivers know that if they ignore his command, they are not simply disobeying one man. They are going against the law, and the consequences are serious. In the same way, you may not feel strong enough to push against the weight of life's challenges, but when you walk in authority, even the largest obstacles recognize the power that is backing you. The problem for many people is not that they lack power, but that they do not recognize or exercise the authority they've already been given. They live as if they are victims to whatever comes their way, never realizing that they have the right to speak, to act, and to stand against the very things that try to control them. It is like someone holding the keys to a house, but still sleeping outside on the porch, because they never chose to use them. The authority is already theirs, but until they put it into practice, they will continue to live beneath their privilege. Authority also changes the way you see yourself. Without it, you will look at your weaknesses and assume they disqualify you. You will measure yourself by your limitations and assume that's all there is. But when you know you have authority, you stop defining yourself by what you can do, and you start defining yourself by what has been entrusted to you. That is why authority gives you confidence even when your resources look small. Think of David standing before Goliath. In human terms, he was outmatched. He was smaller, younger, less experienced, and armed with nothing but a sling and stones. But David understood authority. He knew he wasn't stepping onto the battlefield in his own power. He came with the backing of something far greater. And because of that, what looked weak in the eyes of men became unstoppable in the eyes of God. Authority also means that what once controlled you no longer has the right to dominate you. There are patterns, addictions, and cycles that convince people they are trapped forever. They believe their family history, their failures, or their temptations lock them into a powerless life. But authority breaks that illusion. Authority declares that chains can fall, strongholds can be destroyed, and old patterns can be reversed. When you realize authority has already been handed to you, you stop asking for permission to be free, and you begin walking in freedom. Yet authority must be activated. A police officer can have the badge and the uniform, but if he sits at home and never steps into the street, his authority is meaningless in practice. The same is true for you. It is not enough to know you have authority. You must speak it, act on it, and walk in it. Authority becomes real when it is exercised. That means you don't wait for your feelings to line up. You don't wait until you feel strong or capable. You take the authority you've been given and you step forward with it, even if everything around you tells you otherwise. When authority is understood, fear begins to lose its grip. Fear thrives on convincing you that you are powerless. It whispers that the situation is bigger than you, that the opposition is stronger than you, and that you will never overcome. But fear cannot stand against authority. The moment you stop agreeing with its lies and start standing in what you've been given, fear begins to shrink. Authority silences the voice of intimidation. Authority reminds you that what opposes you is not greater than what backs you. You are not powerless because authority has already been given to you. That authority is not based on your emotions, your background, or your limitations. It is a gift, a position, a responsibility that allows you to stand firm when everything else tries to push you down. It gives you the right to act with confidence, to move with courage, and to confront what once held you captive. And when you understand that truth, you stop walking like a victim and you start walking like someone who knows they carry the weight of something greater. Powerlessness comes from forgetting to use what you already possess. Many people walk through life feeling like they are constantly at the mercy of situations, as though they have no say, no ability, and no control over the circumstances pressing them down. But the truth is, much of the weakness they feel comes not because they lack resources, but because they fail to remember or apply what is already theirs. It is not that they have been stripped of all strength. It is that they have left what they have unused. Think of someone who has been given a gift card with unlimited credit, but never takes it to the store. That card could open access to everything they need, but if it stays in their pocket unused, their life will not look any different from someone who has nothing at all. The same principle holds true in the spiritual and practical dimensions of life. Many have been given the tools, the wisdom, the promises, and the capacity to rise, but because they do not draw on them, they live as though they are empty-handed. Powerlessness is often not the absence of power. It is the neglect of power. Forgetting what you already have is one of the greatest tricks life and the enemy play. Pressures pile up, distractions multiply, challenges grow louder, and in the noise you begin to think you are without help. You look at your life and say, I don't have enough strength to get through this. I don't have enough hope to believe again. I don't have enough vision to see a way out. But if you take a closer look, you will discover that something has already been placed in your possession. There is a seed of strength already within you. There are promises already spoken over you. There is wisdom already deposited in you. Forgetting it makes you powerless, but remembering it changes everything. When people forget what they have, they also begin to chase after substitutes. They look for shortcuts, unhealthy relationships, destructive habits, or empty pleasures to fill the void they think exists. They cling to things that can never provide lasting stability, because they assume they are lacking what they already carry. But the real tragedy is not the absence of supply. It is the blindness to what has been supplied. It's like starving in a kitchen full of food simply because you never opened the pantry. The story of Moses illustrates this principle powerfully. When he stood before the burning bush, overwhelmed by the task placed on his shoulders, he felt powerless. He argued that he was not eloquent, that people would not listen, that he did not have what it took. But God asked him one simple question: "What is in your hand?" Moses looked down and saw the staff he had carried for years. To him it was an ordinary stick, but in the right hands it became a tool of authority, miracles, and deliverance. The staff had always been with him, but he had forgotten its significance. The very thing he already possessed became the instrument of breakthrough. That story reminds us that powerlessness is not about lacking. It is about failing to see what has been in your hand all along. Another way people forget what they already have is by constantly comparing themselves to others. They look at someone else's gifts, opportunities, or blessings and assume that because they don't have what that person has, they are powerless. But comparison blinds you to your own possession. You may not carry what someone else carries, but what you have is exactly what you need for your journey. A farmer cannot plant another man's seed, but if he tends to what is in his own hand, the harvest will come. Powerlessness often grows out of the soil of comparison, because when you devalue your own resources, you stop using them. The mind also plays a key role in this forgetting. Thoughts of defeat, rehearsed failures, and old wounds cloud memory. Instead of recalling victories and strengths, people replay mistakes until they convince themselves they are powerless. But memory can be trained. If you intentionally call to mind past deliverances, times when you overcame, and moments when you found strength you didn't know you had, then you remind yourself of what is already available. That act of remembering is itself a weapon against the feeling of weakness. Forgetting makes you powerless, but remembering arms you again. Living powerless is like leaving an engine running, but never putting the car in gear. The power is present, but it goes nowhere because it is unused. You already have the ignition, the keys, and the gas tank filled. But if you never shift into motion, you'll stay parked while life passes you by. The issue is not the lack of power, but the lack of action to release it. Fear only has the strength you agree to give it. Fear by itself is nothing more than a shadow, an echo that whispers in the background. It does not carry substance until you hand it authority in your life. The problem is that most people treat fear as though it is truth. They allow the whispers to grow louder than reality. They let the shadow take on a form it was never meant to have. And as soon as agreement is given, fear multiplies. It grows in size and influence because it has been permitted to take root in the mind. Fear thrives on permission. If you starve it, it shrinks. If you feed it, it flourishes. Agreement is the food that keeps fear alive. You agree with it when you rehearse its lies in your mind, when you surrender to its intimidation, when you allow its predictions to dictate your choices. Once fear gains that agreement, it begins to shape how you live. It causes hesitation where there should be courage. It breeds silence where there should be a voice. It stirs paralysis where there should be action. Yet all of it is built on nothing but the power you gave away. When you refuse to agree with fear, its grip weakens. That is why courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to surrender authority to it. Fear may speak, but you don't have to listen. Fear may present itself, but you don't have to bow. It can knock on the door of your thoughts every day, but unless you open the door and invite it inside, it cannot dominate your house. Agreement is the key that either lets fear rule or keeps fear outside. Think about the Israelites standing at the edge of the Promised Land. They sent 12 spies to look at the territory. All 12 saw the same land, the same giants, the same challenges, but not all 12 came back with the same report. 10 agreed with fear and said, "We are like grasshoppers in their sight. We cannot overcome them." 2 agreed with faith and declared, "We are well able to take the land." The giants did not change size based on who looked at them. What changed was the agreement. 10 handed over their strength to fear, and fear grew larger than life. 2 refused to surrender, and because of that, they saw possibility instead of defeat. Fear only has as much weight as you choose to give it. Fear is skilled at disguising itself as wisdom. It tells you not to step out because it might not work. It warns you that risk is too dangerous, that failure is too certain, that rejection is too painful. But beneath its disguise, it is still the same empty voice, waiting for you to agree. True wisdom can discern the difference between caution and fear. Caution is based on reality and sound judgment. Fear is based on lies that exaggerate threats until they appear immovable. Many never pursue dreams, never heal relationships, never take steps of faith because they confuse the whisper of fear with the counsel of wisdom. The result is paralysis. And paralysis is simply fear with your signature of agreement stamped on it. Fear also loves to rehearse the past. It reminds you of every mistake, every failure, every weakness, until you are convinced you will never overcome. It chains you to what has already been broken, convincing you that your history is your destiny. But the past only holds power when you continue to sign your name beneath it. Agreement with fear is what allows yesterday's failures to dominate today's possibilities. The moment you break that agreement, fear loses its hold, and the past loses its power to dictate the future. Even in the face of great threats, people who refuse to agree with fear stand differently. They walk into the fire with confidence. They face lions with courage. They confront giants with a steady heart. The circumstances may not change immediately, but the strength to face them comes from knowing that fear does not hold authority unless it is given. Fear cannot write your story unless you hand it the pen. Every time fear shows up, you have a choice. You can feed it with your thoughts, your focus, and your words, or you can starve it by refusing to give it agreement. When you starve it, it grows weaker. When you stop rehearsing its lines, its voice fades. When you stop surrendering your choices to it, its influence collapses. Fear only has the strength you agree to give it, and when agreement is broken, fear has no foundation to stand on. True power is rooted in truth, not in feelings or emotions. Feelings are real, but they are not reliable. Emotions rise and fall with circumstances, with moods, with the ups and downs of life. One moment you feel strong, the next moment you feel weak. One day you feel confident, the next day you are overwhelmed with doubt. If your power is tied to what you feel, then your stability will always be fragile, shifting like sand beneath your feet. But when power is rooted in truth, it becomes steady, consistent, and unshaken no matter what emotions may scream. Feelings can convince you that you are defeated even while you are standing in victory. They can whisper that you are abandoned when in reality you are not alone. They can tell you that you are too broken to rise again, even though restoration is already possible. That is why living by feelings leads to a powerless life. Feelings create illusions that appear real but collapse under the weight of truth. When you choose to anchor your life in truth, you are no longer tossed by the storm of emotions. Truth does not deny feelings, but it refuses to be ruled by them. There are countless examples of people who felt one way but walked in another because of truth. Take Elijah, the prophet who stood boldly on Mount Carmel, calling down fire from heaven. He witnessed undeniable demonstrations of power, but later, when Jezebel threatened him, he felt fear and despair so deeply that he wanted to die. His feelings told him his mission was over, that he was powerless against her. Yet the truth was that his assignment was not finished, his purpose was not gone, and his God was not absent. His feelings were loud, but they were not final. Truth still carried him forward, even when emotions dragged him low. Feelings are tied to sight and perception, but truth goes beyond what eyes can see. The Israelites at the Red Sea felt trapped when they saw the waters before them and Pharaoh's army behind them. Fear rose, panic spread, and their emotions told them they were finished. But truth declared that a way was already prepared, even if they could not yet see it. When Moses stretched out his staff, the waters parted, proving that truth is stronger than fear-driven feelings. If they had remained bound to what they felt, they would have never taken a step forward. But when they trusted the truth, they walked into freedom. In everyday life, the same principle applies. A person may feel unworthy of forgiveness because of past mistakes, but truth says forgiveness is available. A person may feel unable to break free from an addiction, but truth says chains can be broken. A person may feel insignificant and unseen, but truth says they are chosen and valuable. Feelings constantly shift with the weather of circumstances, but truth stands like a mountain unmoved by storms. The only question is, which voice will you allow to define you? The unstable cry of emotions or the unshakable foundation of truth? Emotions also have the power to exaggerate. They can turn small challenges into towering giants. They can stretch temporary setbacks into lifelong sentences. They can magnify rejection into total abandonment. That is why relying on them as a source of power leaves you empty. Power rooted in feelings is like building a house on quicks, and no matter how strong it looks at first, it will sink as soon as the ground shifts. But truth provides a foundation that does not erode with time, does not collapse under pressure, and does not change with moods. Truth also guards against manipulation. People often use emotions to control others. Fear, guilt, and shame are emotional weapons that can enslave the mind. But when truth anchors your power, manipulation loses its hold. You are no longer swayed by the emotional tides others try to stir up. Instead, you discern the difference between what feels pressing and what is truly right. Power rooted in truth is steady, resilient, and not easily shaken by the pressures of others. Even within yourself, emotions can deceive you into quitting too soon. How many times have people given up not because the task was impossible, but because it felt impossible? They stopped walking because they felt tired, not realizing they had strength left. They stopped believing because they felt hopeless, not knowing that the breakthrough was closer than they imagined. Feelings persuaded them to surrender power they already had. But when truth is the anchor, you can keep pressing forward even when feelings scream the opposite, because truth does not waver. Truth-centered power also brings clarity. When storms hit, emotions cloud judgment, making it hard to see clearly. Panic blinds you, anger blinds you, fear blinds you, but truth cuts through the fog and restores perspective. It tells you what is real, what is stable, and what cannot be shaken. And when you cling to that, you stand firm even when emotions rage inside you. True power is rooted in truth, not in feelings or emotions. When you build on truth, you tap into strength that does not fluctuate. You stop living like a victim of moods, circumstances, and fears, and you start living from a foundation that does not crack when pressure comes. Feelings may shift, but truth endures, and the power that comes from truth carries you when emotions cannot. Circumstances don't define your capacity, authority does. Life will always present circumstances that try to tell you who you are and what you can or cannot do. Circumstances speak loudly when bills are due and money is low, when sickness touches the body, when relationships fall apart, or when the path forward looks blocked. They declare limitation. They announce impossibility. They try to convince you that your capacity is determined by the situation pressing against you. But circumstances do not have the final word. Your true capacity is not measured by what surrounds you. It is measured by the authority that has already been given to you. Circumstances may say you are trapped, but authority says you are free. Circumstances may scream that you are too weak, but authority says strength has been granted. Circumstances may tell you the door is shut, but authority says you have the key. The danger is when people allow their lives to be shaped by what they see instead of by the authority that has been entrusted to them. When you let circumstances define you, you will always live beneath your calling, because circumstances are designed to change. They are temporary, shifting, rising, and falling like waves. Authority, on the other hand, is permanent. It does not bend under pressure, and it does not depend on conditions. Consider Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and later thrown into prison for a crime he did not commit. His circumstances shouted that he was powerless, forgotten, and defeated. If Joseph had defined himself by what surrounded him, he would have accepted the role of a victim and lived out his days in despair. But authority was working in his life, even in the lowest places. That authority elevated him from the pit to the palace. His capacity was not measured by the chains on his wrists or the walls of his cell, but by the authority that had been placed on his destiny. David faced the same truth when he encountered Goliath. The circumstance looked impossible. A boy with a sling standing against a seasoned warrior armed with sword, spear, and shield. Every soldier in Israel looked at the circumstance and calculated defeat. But David looked beyond the circumstance to the authority he carried. His capacity was not defined by the size of the giant, but by the authority that came from the one who sent him. That authority gave him boldness to step forward when others ran away, and it was authority, not circumstance, that decided the outcome of that battle. Circumstances also love to create illusions of permanence. They make you believe that because you are in a storm today, you will always be in a storm. They whisper that the difficulty you face now will never end. But storms pass, seasons shift, and problems fade. If you attach your identity to what is temporary, you will constantly rise and fall with each wave. Authority gives you stability in the storm. It reminds you that your capacity does not shrink just because the wind is raging. Authority anchors you so that while the storm may shake everything else, you remain unshaken.